credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vitruvian Man podcast, a podcast centered around self-mastery. I am your host, Zach Shenkin. Today, I have a very special guest with me. Born in Nigeria, Bayonle Arashi has always had a passion for others. He's the founder of Scoutballers LLC, a media and sports recruiting platform designed to be a solution for athletes looking to make a jump in their career. He also founded Midas Football Academy in Nigeria, set up to discover, educate, and develop football players. Bayonle is currently working on building a facility where the players can combine vocational education and soccer to reach their full potential. Bayonle also does work as a coach, international sports broadcaster, and mentor. In addition to all of this, he also works in Houston as a correctional officer at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, where he has a unique perspective on the violent and dangerous side that many of us are kept ignorant to. Bayonle, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me, Zach. It's my pleasure being here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out. I know we connected through the mutual friend now of Coach Lou. It was a pretty incredible opportunity. I had to have him on. And so I know that you have also found tremendous amount of inspiration through his words and made the connection of it yourself. Do you mind sharing a little bit about how you met Coach Lou originally?
Absolutely. Let me start by saying thank you very much for having me again. And Coach Lou is a very, very incredible character. He's a huge person of value. And I think I've learned a lot from his work, just as I've always done in my life. I'm an aspiring leader, so I call myself, and I'm a student of leadership. I always look for people that are doing the right thing, people that are walking their path, people that are following their purpose, and that are developing other leaders. And I think that was how I came about meeting Coach Lou Carrala. It was just one of my search on Instagram, and I came about his video. And I just saw this person with so much passion, even though he was a coach. I didn't even know then that he was a strength coach, a strength and conditioning coach. You would think he's probably the head coach of the football team at Georgia Tech, but he was a strength coach. His work inspired me. The things he was saying, the message he was passing across to his athletes, and I'm sure that's how he thinks, was not just for his athlete. The message resonates to every other person that has a purpose or that has some form of a sense of calling for their life. So I dug deeper into his work and connected, and he responded very gentlemanly. Believe it or not, he had a conference in, I think, April or May this year. Was it Jan? I can't remember, but I had to go all the way from Houston to that event in Georgia Tech in Atlanta. And he was really, really, really surprised, and he appreciated it. He actually gave me a shout out during the session. That is special. So I really appreciate his connection, and thank God for him. Came across you as well. So I think that's how the world should work and how we should always be to each other.
I completely agree. I mean, I think that one of my favorite parts of starting this whole process is just seeing the amazing people that have come into my life just by me putting it out there, right? Like by nature of me putting out my thoughts and feelings and learnings, it's brought really, really incredible people into my life that otherwise would have just been, somewhere else, right? Like we are not physically close to each other. We would not cross paths on the street, but having this conversation, making the connection in the first place, just simply by proxy of putting myself out there, it's been really, really special. And likewise, you're putting yourself and your content out there, and your message for people to hear, and that will bring, and I'm sure has brought, amazing people into your life. But I wanted to start off, tell me a little bit about your background. You were obviously born and raised in Nigeria. How long were you there? And then tell me about the transition to America. Did you always know you wanted to come here eventually? A little bit of the spark notes.
That's a very interesting question. My story, I've shared it a couple of times, and I'm always very, very excited whenever someone asks me about it. But I've always tried not to say everything word for word, because by the time I do that, it might be 30 minutes in already on the podcast. So,
Yeah.
well, I was born in the Asian city of Ibadan. Is in the city is a city in Oyo State. In the about 42 years ago. I was born in 1980. And then my dad is a surveyor, my mom is a trader. My dad has a basic education, but he's always been someone that is very, very passionate about his children and wants his, just like every other parent out there that I know, wants his kids to succeed. I think they took me from maybe while I was 6 months or so to Lagos. They call it Lagos, but it's actually not. It's in Ogun State. And then I had my first education, which they call elementary here. And I also have my primary school education. Of course, I know American system of education is different. We call it grades here now, but we call it elementary and we call it primary education. And then I went for my high school back in Ibadan where I was born. And then I didn't do very well when I finished my high school, and I was very young. So my dad thought it wise to send me to government technical college. It was a vocational center where you can have a diploma, and at the end of and also have like a professional path to doing something. Then a lot of people don't see it as the right path. They think it's only failures that go to vocational schools like that, because after high school, you should automatically go to a university or some sort of polytechnic, as we call it. But I didn't do that. So I went for this 3-year vocational education at the Government Technical College. I studied broadcast communication. We call it radio and television broadcasting. It was a 3 years course. And after it, in 1999, I graduated. After a few months, I started applying for jobs, and I got my first job. Of course, this is also very exciting. It was a professional job in a broadcast organization. I was employed as a technician at MITV, Mori International Television. There, I was supposed to be a technician, but whenever I put on the transmitter, which was an analog transmitter, analog system back then, I would just leave. Instead of me sitting down there and be looking at the transmitter, I would go to where they're doing the production. I would be watching them, not knowing that my supervisor back then was watching me. He obviously saw that I was not interested in engineering or being a technician. So he called me, he said, young man, I think you're not going to be an engineer. So I'm going to facilitate you into the production department. And that was how I moved into production and broadcasting. I started learning as a vision mixer, and then I became director. I was directing broadcasting every day. And then from there, I got a big job with Africa Independent Television. It was the biggest local station back then. In 2002, I think I moved there, and that was where I had my big break. That channel moved me to the sport department, where I was covering football. We call it soccer here. Every tournament that the national team is going to qualify for, they normally send us to go cover it. And since my training is in directing live soccer events, live soccer matches, that's what I was doing. I had the pleasure of going to start traveling overseas, then had my first flight on that job. I had my first international trip on that job. And then I started seeing the game in the bigger picture. Like, look at it. When I went to Germany, for example, at the World Cup in 2006, I saw that the game of soccer was big, huge. Everybody was playing on the street. People were playing the game up to midnight because the weather was still, daylight was still there. And I came back home and I started thinking, what can I do? And that was how the vision of Midas Football Academy came across, that what can I do for my people? I never thought I was going to be in a leadership position, but I just think it's just that drive that you have is a seed that is always in every one of us. I just found it very early. And I just called a friend that I think I'm going to start a soccer academy. If that friend happens to be a soccer player that was not very successful at this game, because the odd is very, very high. It's a high level skill game to play. And then we started in 2008. And in 2009, some of the friends I've made in Germany and other part of the world, one of them told me, why can't you bring your team? I see you have a team. And just like you and I found out about each other, I was an early user of internet back then. I said early, I'm sure you probably started using it earlier than us, but I started using internet in the 2000s, right? So we are ready to take my academy in our second year of operation for a tournament in Germany and Denmark. I applied for visa for about 18 players, 3 officials. After the interview, the embassy only granted 12 players and 1 official visa. That 1 official being me. To my 2 other coaches that were the actual coach were not given visa. Some of my best players were not given visa, but they gave 12. So during every game, we had 11 players on the field and we have 1 player on standby that can only go in. That was how interesting it was. Believe it or not, those kids were 15, 16-year-olds, so it was at under 17 level. We won both tournaments in Germany. We also went to Denmark and we won that tournament as well. So that was like my first big break as an entrepreneur. I came back with all the kids back to Nigeria, and that was how I saw that, okay, there's a bigger picture here. There's something more we can do than just training these kids. These kids can actually train, develop, and use this skill. They can export this skill and start training and start earning money from it. And that was my adventure into Soccer Academy. I did it a year, 2, 3, and then the failure started coming. We tried to go the following year back to Europe. Visas were not granted. We tried to take some of the kids for professional tryouts in other countries. They were not succeeding. And then some other bad elements that were in the game that didn't have the genuine interest of helping the kids also got involved in the game. And that was how a lot of the failures I was seeing. And I said, okay, we have to pivot. This is still what we want to do, but we have to do it in another way. What can we add? So I started looking inward, looking at clubs in Africa, looking at the local clubs in the country, and said, okay, I had a vocational education. Why can't we build a facility where these kids can, if soccer did not work for them, they can take something with them by the time they leave the academy after 1 or 2, 3 years they attend. So we started redesigning the academy, and I look at myself and I said, what can I do now? I look at the environment, it was not favorable anymore. I had already left my job as a broadcaster with AIT. I was full-time entrepreneur, presenting shows on the radio and TV to make income personally, but investing it on the academy. So I look at, okay, there has to be a bigger system. And that was how I created Scoutballers, so that other players, other kids in different parts of Africa can have like a marketplace where they can showcase their skill and they can say, okay, let's take it abroad. And I created Scoutballers, but the environment was not okay to do that. There was no money. There was not enough developers that can help develop the dream without money. Everything was happening in America and Europe. So I said, okay, let me try to find my way out there. So I applied to this entrepreneurship program by Atlas Core. They are called in New York City. They give young Africans that are 35-year-old and below an opportunity to come to the United States for 1 year. They're going to attach them to a company, an NGO, or an established company to learn entrepreneurship from them. And then after the 1 year, you have to go back to your country. So I got to the finals of it. The interview was done, but I was not selected. I was not part of the 17 that was selected for 2014, but I had a US visa on me. So I said, okay, let me leave. And that was how I came to the United States. And that was how I arrived here. And the journey in the United States have been rough. Has been very, very, very rough. But I think I'm still going to tell you about that as we go on.
Yeah. So with the coaching, I guess, had you had previous coaching experience, or were you kind of learning to coach alongside building the business the whole time? I mean, obviously, I assume you had grown up playing the game of soccer, so you knew the sport well, but translating that into coaching, was that something that you had done in the past?
No, at all. My first coaching experience was at that tournament I told you we went for in Europe. That was the first time. Wow. And the only reason why I coached the team was because my coaches were not given visas. So I was supposed to be in charge of operations of the academy to try and discuss possibility of those kids affiliating with academies there or clubs there. But since I was the only person, so I was the father, I was the big brother, I was the coach, I was the manager, I was everything to the kids during that tournament. But it gave birth to that that seed in me, that there's a bigger calling upon my life to step in and do something big. And the word coach back then, I used to see it as in a very, very little way, but it's a very huge industry. Just as I mentioned, Coach Lou earlier. I mean, he's a strength and conditioning coach, but look at how much impact he has had on a lot of people, young and old, and in different parts of the world. And that was how I started picking up education. I started reading. I'm a student of books. Books have led me to a lot of discovery. Most of the things I've done in my life have been, I found it in books. And I was very, very interested in self-development books, psychology books, biographies of people that have done great stuff. So I started seeing coaching in a bigger way. And then I started picking up a certification from it. And that was how I stepped into coaching. But having arrived in the United States, I didn't even go to coaching straight away. I went into soccer refereeing. I was refereeing first for the first 6-7 years, even though I was picking up coaching certification. But while refereeing games, you are more or less like in charge of, as an administrator. I saw the coaching. I heard the languages the coaches were using on the field. I see the attitude. I see the way they lead. Most of them, in terms of professionalism, and we're not professional. We have American football coaches coaching soccer, and there are two different methodologies entirely. You can't use football for soccer, even though in terms of discipline they are similar, but in terms of a lot of other things, there is no similarity in those two sports at all. So, and I started asking myself, maybe it's time for you to step in and do something. And that was how I got into coaching full time.
Okay. And when you did end up just kind of taking your visa and saying, all right, I need to go to the US, that's where the opportunity is. Where did you go first? And then were you moving around a lot, or did you stay in one area for a while?
Zach, that was why I had to cut off that introduction earlier, because this one also is it's going to be a long introduction, but I'll make it as short as I could. My journey has been interesting. So when I came in, when I got the visa and I started making plans, I told my wife and my kids, my young daughters back then, that look, Dad wants to give you a better life, and definitely it doesn't look that the situation of our country is going to give Daddy that opportunity. So I need to go away for a while. They were young. My youngest then was 10. My oldest then was 10. Youngest was 1. And they were just looking at me. I think maybe the 10-year-old understood what I was saying, but the rest probably don't. So I talked to a few friends. There was one particular person that said, okay, I have a friend in New York that you're going to meet, and he's into broadcasting. It's going to set you up, and believe it or not, there is this belief back home, and people still believe this. And I'm happy I'm saying it here today, that once you come to the United States or any European countries, that there's just some money tree once you land that will start dropping money on you, and you start picking it up. And by your first 6 months in America or wherever you are, you're a millionaire, And I used to believe that too, believe it or not, that it was going to be very easy. So I said, okay. And I bought a ticket, Lagos, Atlanta, I remember very, very well, and Atlanta, New York. So I arrived New York in a very cold February evening. And I called this person, I bought a line. I called this person, they asked to come pick me at the airport. Zach, he was not picking my call. I called several times. And based on thank God I've been a frequent traveler, I started thinking, is this person ignoring my call, or what could be going on? Apparently he was ignoring my call, and he has not picked my call even ever since 7 years plus after. I've not talked to that person since that time. So I said, okay, I had some money on me, so I went to the train station. There was some affordable hotel. I think I paid about $100 for the hotel a night that day. So I settled up because it was too cold outside. I've never been in so much cold. Whenever I travel for soccer, we always travel in the summer. So even though it is cold, it is never that cold. So that was my first winter travel. So I called a few friends after selling my hotel, like, look, it looks like I'm stranded here. And they said, oh, wow. So one of my friends in Belgium, a coach too, and a soccer agent, told me to hold on, that he'll get back to me. So he called a friend in California, San Bernardino, California, and he told him about my situation. And then the friend called me and said, okay, I heard what happened, and would you love to come to San Bernardino? I said, absolutely, I would love to come. So he asked me to go back to the airport, which was just like a few minutes walk, to check how much the flight is. I think it was about $550 from New York to San Bernardino. And the money on me, if I should pay that, I probably will have less than $100 or $200 on me that I brought into the country. So I told him, I said, no, I can't do that. So he said, okay, go to the train station, inquire about Amtrak. So I went to Amtrak, and I think that was like half of that amount. So I bought a train ticket from New York to San Bernardino. I don't know if you made that kind of trip before. I had no idea. I thought maybe it was just probably a few hours trip, but as laughable as it is, I was in the train for 4 days, 3 nights, and about half a day. And I was just done by the time I arrived in San Bernardino. I was tired. So he picked me up, and he was a coach at a school at the American Sports University. He was coaching the soccer team of that school, and he was also a student as well. So we got into his dorm, and he welcomed, and I was very grateful. And he told me, look, this is what I do, but on the side, I work security. And I said, security? I'm a CEO. I came from Nigeria as a CEO. I can't do no job like that, But he said, okay. He didn't even argue with me. He said, okay, and I settled down. So after a couple of days, I was spending my money. I was eating a lot of Jack in the Box. I think I was having fun. But when I see that the money was going down, I had to call him like, hey, bro, I think I need to start doing something. So my first job in America was a security job at a Dennis restaurant. I remember very, very, very well. And that was how I started my journey. And it's been very interesting, but I'm very, very grateful as well. A few months after that, I got a job in Houston to manage a local broadcast channel through one of my senior colleagues that I talked to, and I told him what I was doing. It was like, no, you are a professional. I have somebody here that needs your help, that actually need your services. And the person asked me to come to Houston. That's how I've been a Texan ever since then.
Okay, so you get to Texas, you start the broadcasting thing. How did you find your way to also working in the correctional facilities and prison system?
Interesting. After 2 years in the broadcasting job, I was trying to do something else. I started refereeing on the side, and I wanted to find a job in a bigger broadcast station, because this channel was a Nigerian-owned TV station. So it only covers a certain part of the state, and you can't even see it on a digital channel. As somebody that has a big vision, I was talking to the CEO of the station that, why don't you do this? But I see that my boss then wasn't receptive to a bigger picture, so I have to start looking for alternative. So I left, and I was applying to jobs at ABC, at NBC TV, at Fox TV, but nobody was calling me for any job. It was later on I found out that one of the challenge, believe it or not, is the fact that I didn't have any education in America. Accent is some sort of not an added advantage for me. But I never look at it like that. I never blamed anybody for anything, because I don't think I'm entitled to anything. But I just kept trying. When I saw that was not coming, I picked up a job with FedEx. I spent a couple of months with FedEx. Then I was at Amazon for about a year as a warehouse person. I picked up all those experiences. Then at Amazon was when somebody told me, if you want to still serve in some professional capacity, maybe you should go to the criminal justice. And I'm like, how? I've never been in a law enforcement or any form of uniform job before, except the security job I did in California, which I even never thought I would ever do in my life. So, and then he said, go give it a shot. So I went to Huntsville, where the TDCJ headquarters is, and I applied, and I was given the job, and then that opened another another world entirely for me. I've always believed I have a calling in helping and raising the younger generation, because I think based on all I've told you so far, people have given me a chance in life. People have discovered my talent even when I did not see it for myself. But working in the criminal justice system, my first day, and I saw a group of whites. I've never seen that before, never. Even after the 6 weeks training at the academy that they gave us, it showed me a totally different picture about life in general, especially life in the United States. And some things that people do not know, that even till date, when I have a chance to speak as a life coach, and I tell people about the system and the going on in there, they still don't believe it's possible, So, but that was how I got into corrections, and ever since then, I've been developing more and more and more my leadership skill. I have learned a lot from inmates. I've learned a lot from the supervisor. I've learned a lot about the industry and about the system as a whole. Even though now, while doing that, I'm still building my own company, Scoutballers, on the side, because that's my actual purpose. But going into that job really helped fine-tuned my life calling. I knew the things that I should do and the ones that I cannot do, and how easy it is for you to derail from your calling, and how easy it is for you to lose focus and lose everything that you have made. So it's a very interesting job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very fascinating. I have quite a bit of. I'm curious. I'm very curious because it's like I kind of alluded to at the beginning. I think it's a wall that we just see things and people go in, and then the general public doesn't see on the inside, right? Like it's you do something bad, you commit a crime, and you are found guilty, and then you go to jail, and like that's just the hard cutoff. We don't know what it's like on the inside, both for the inmate and the workers there, because that it's a whole world of profession. I think even like medicine, people think of I go to the doctor and get better and leave, but that is a profession for someone. In the same way that you think of criminals go to jail, well, somebody has to run it. People have to. It's an actual job. So I'm curious what your specific role is. Like what does a day-to-day look like? What are some of the things that you have to do? I'm sure it is somewhat variable, but
yes, it is variable. And you mentioned something about jail. We actually have it in two ways. A jail is when you are picked up by the police, your first point of arrest. Let's say you have a DWI, and then they picked you up, put cuffs on you, and they put you in jail. That is where the police look after you. Maybe you are a repeated offender. Maybe you've done it before and they let you go, and then you did it again, and then they can process you and then make you face the judge. And then when they now sentence you, you have to go to a state penitentiary. So it depends on also your violation. I hope it is not a federal. If it is a federal offense, you go to a federal incarceration center. But if most of the time it is state. I work for the state, so I can talk about the state prison system. One of the things I always say is they call it Department of Corrections, and that is what the purpose, that is the trademark, the motto of the agency is. But our motto is courage, perseverance, commitment, and for you to be able to like just persevere. But we are supposed to also help the inmates to reintegrate back into society based on their experience in there, for us to let them know, look, you have to behave this way, you have to behave this way. So it's a different ballgame in the jail and in the prison. So in the prison, for example, as a correctional officer, my day starts very early in the morning, 2 a.m. sometimes. We got to wake up as a person of that have some sort of a spiritual practice. I pray, do my short workout in the morning because there's not enough time to do it in the day. Then shower by 3:30, you're already on the way. And most prison facilities also are built outside of the city. They are in farm to market areas where you have to drive a couple of miles to get there. And then you get to work, you have to attend a shift briefing where your supervisors are going to tell you the plan for the day. This is what and what we're going to do today. These are the inmates that we have to focus on. And there are also categories of inmates. When they come in, they always put them in a particular orders. Like, okay, you are categorized as so level of inmate. You are categorized as so level of inmate. So based on your experience as an officer, depending on how many years you've come in, that's when they're going to put you in charge of a certain amount of inmates. For example, I work at a camp, and most of the inmates I manage now are trustees. They're G1s. That's what we call them. They are people that are either done a long time and they're ready to go back to the world. Their behavior is much more better, and they have learned a trade, they have learned a vocation in the prison, or they have gotten their GED, or they are sick, they are weak and old, and they can't do so much. But I manage on a daily basis. I have about over 320 of them that I manage by myself, and every day I have to care for them for a 12-hour shift. But before I arrived at that level of being able to manage those, I had to manage the violent ones as well, the younger ones that don't listen to nobody, that are either coming into the penitentiary for the first time, and you tell them to do the F you, they just drop the bomb on you and they just do whatever they want to do. But like I said, for me, I don't see the job in that light. I see it for me as a reminder of what a man should be and why every man that is born on this planet Earth, male in particular, when I say man, I mean a male, should have a calling, should have a purpose, and should be able to find it very early in life. Because I think that is the summary of my experience in the penitentiary system as a correctional officer, that most of these guys at one point did not know what they are here for or why they are here. And then they choose that life, they make bad choices, they make some poor or bad choices, whichever word works out, and then it ends them there. And most of the time, I've also come to the conclusion that once you are unfortunately caught and sentenced for the first time, many of them repeat it at least 2 more times before they start having that reminder that maybe I should not be doing this. And the time many of them do realize it, they are already deep into their 40s. So for me, coming from an immigrant background and having told you all I experienced both at home in Nigeria and on my trips across the world, and when I first came into the country, seeing the amount of suffering, pain, and work I have to do to be able to be a part of the country, to be able to do something for myself and fend for my family. And then looking at some of them, most of them born as an American, that I feel that they have nothing that should be limiting them, but chose the path of violence and crime is what I think needs a change and need immediate change. There's a lot of drug use. There's a lot of bad friends. There's a lot of gang-related issues going on that these kids just don't know. Many of them, when I see them, they have potential of being super athletes in any sport they want to do. You see them 6'5", 6'6", 7 feet tall. Some you see them big with so much potential, but in their mind, they just don't remember that. They just don't think about that. And for some of us too, thank God for book, thank God for parents. It took us a lot of constant reminder to find out that you have 3 things you have to really focus on in life. Number 1 is for you to develop your mindset, because Once your mindset is in a position of mess, there's really nothing much you can do. It's just, you just probably have no chance in life to do anything right. But if you're able to fix your mindset, you will definitely maybe find your path. Also, you have to be able to develop your communication skill. Like one of my favorite authors says, what's the man's name? Now I'm trying to remember his name. He always say that you have to develop a communication skill. You have to be only quality people. Find people that you think are thinking like you. People that have something that they are focusing on, that they are chasing, and then just like people you should be studying. I told you I studied Luke Carala and a lot of other people, Gary Vaynerchuk. I mean, just mention them. All these guys that are doing great stuff for themselves. David Goggins. I mean, I read his book and I never stopped running. I mean, David Goggins' book made me become an over athlete. I mean, because I could hear him in his book cursing at me, like, get off your butt and go get some running. So many of these guys are not, they don't realize this, and these are the things I have been doing, even though that should be our job in the first place, but not many of us practice this as an officer or as person that work in there. But because I saw the bigger picture, I've done my little bit to every day I go in to make sure that I just don't go to take the pay, but to actually offer a service to make sure when I'm leaving at the end of the day, I say, I have done my best. But also on a bigger level, to go out there and start talking to the younger ones, the teenagers that are still in middle school, that are in high school, not to ever make a poor choice or poor choices that will land them there, because once you are in, I think you're locked in.
Yeah. That's I mean, a very fascinating perspective. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, you kind of alluded to all men needing deeply to find that purpose and being purpose driven in your day to day, and it having an end effect that is extremely significant to the point of getting incarcerated potentially for the rest of your life, and causing harm to not only yourself but the people around you. I'm curious what, based on your experiences, I mean, because purposelessness is a bit of a vague, it's a bit of it's a broad and hard to grasp topic. What do you think is the biggest commonality you see between, those inmates, especially maybe more on the violent side? What is kind of a through line? I know we talked offline a little bit about the role of fatherhood, so I wanted to kind of hear your perspective on that as well.
I mean, you just mentioned it right there. That is actually the number one commonality. Again, I'm going to bring that path because that's my story. As a Nigerian first, that had both of my parents in the house, I could have probably been a professional soccer player at one point in my life. But believe it or not, my dad back then was about your book. And if you don't read your book after you have spent hours in school, when you get back home, you're going to have it. He's going to, I mean, they call it assault in America today, but he will beat the living day out of you. Like you will know that you have done something bad. And I also, like I said, I'm a Christian. Someone that is fortunate to have read the Bible. I am sure it is also written there in Proverbs and in other books in the Bible. It's written there that a punishment does not kill a child. It only corrects them. Nobody ever died getting corrected. I've not seen it before. I've not heard it. I've not heard of it. But the culture here is totally different, and I think it's a major challenge, and it is not getting better. Most inmates that I know, old, maybe the ones from from 60s, I do engage them. When you ask them, some of them don't even know their fathers. They've never met them. Some of them have had their kids, their own sons, incarcerated while they are in. And some of them have had 3 generations already incarcerated. I mean, there are stories of heartbreaking stories, because I'm writing a book. I already authored a book based on my experience as a soccer broadcaster and entrepreneur. But my second book, which I titled Gray in the White Line, hopefully it's going to come out sometime in 2023, is filled with stories, stories behind the walls. That's what that's the tag of that book. Stories that when you hear them, I wish I can share one or two. You will be like, how did that happen? I mean, how? So fatherlessness is the number one challenge. Mothers are given the responsibilities that is necessarily not theirs, or that they should only be a backup for, but they are given the responsibility of raising men in America. And for me, I think that's the number one menace of the society at the moment. Most of the teenagers that you see, they're raised by their moms, and the mom did a hell lot of work just to make sure they get it right. But the moms cannot follow you to school. The moms cannot understand your energy, that teenage energy, that adolescence feeling, that adolescent behavior that you have, that only a father can understand and maybe help you control at that age. Because once you miss it in those those vital years of your life, it is always very, very, very difficult to fix if you don't have a support system at that age. And I think that's a role I am playing at the moment, and I'm hoping to play. I don't see it as a job at all. To many young men out there, if you need support, if you need somebody to talk to, if you need a father figure, a big brother figure, you don't have to see me as a father, but if you see me as a brother or as a friend, somebody you can share your male ego challenges with. Because sometimes as males, we don't tell our mom some stuff. We don't tell our women some stuff. We want to tell it to a fellow male that, number one, we think is not going to judge us. If at all he's going to judge us, he's going to judge us based on his understanding, and your feelings will not be hurt. Because some of them, even though you can blame them all you want that you don't have fathers, but some of them did have the excitement, the thought of sharing those challenges with someone before it comes out as violence. For someone that goes to rob a liquor store, for example, a teenager, what does he need that for? You will like you if you're a father, you got to ask him, why do you have to steal at a liquor store to confirm that you're a male because you want to get drunk? Why do you have to go rob a shopping mall, a gas station, someone that you know that is hustling, trying to make his money, just for you to get validated, just for you to show that you are in town? There's a lot of little things that they do that are very, very avoidable if they just have someone to share with. And that is my own personal job now that I do, which is one of my courses, my personal social course, which I called Crossing Bridges, giving opportunity to kids in underserved communities, the opportunity not just to learn how to play soccer, other sports as well, but more importantly, after every session of talking soccer, teaching them soccer, to talk to them, to make them ask you those questions that I just mentioned now, things that are burning in them. Talk about it. Let's share it. And probably in the next few months or in the next few years, you're going to hear a lot more about it, about the social course and more of my work.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, I think I completely believe that statement. If for no reason other than you're doing work, one, that needs to be done, but it's good. And I choose to believe that when people act in accordance with their purpose and provide positive value to the world and to others, it will succeed in the end, whether it's when you want it to or decades and decades down the road. It will all pay in the end. And even if it doesn't bring, success to yourself, it will change the lives of those people that you impact. And that's the positive from it. And I also think that you touched on an important point about having good male role models and also a community. I think part of what I'm trying to build with my program and everything, it's having a community of guys wanting to improve themselves, but not having to do it alone. It's really, really hard. It's already very hard to do it by yourself. All these things, when you're developing yourself, you're reading, you're training, you're trying to figure out how to be the best version of you, but to do it alone is so hard, because when you fall, when you stumble, when you're struggling, when you're at a low point and you have no one to go to, that's when you can fall off the path. Versus if you have strong men around you, they may be at better places at that time and they can pick you up and use their strength to hold you when you're weak, and when you're strong and they're weak, you can hold them up. I think it's so critical. And you also said, like, wanting to share. I think there is something about male to male communication, and likewise female to female. Like, we will never be able to truly meet each other at that same level. I think
No.
men and women are meant to augment each other, and they balance the yin and the yang. They're meant to be in that duality, but they're not identical. They're very
They're not the
different.
same.
They're just not the same, and so the communication likewise can't be the same. A man can't share a man's struggles with a woman and
No.
be met with the help that he needs, just like a woman can't share all of her struggles with a man and be met with all of what she needs. She needs her female community to be supportive and meet her where she's at, just like men need the same. And I think we've been pushed in a community where that concept, or even what I'm talking about now, has been deemed toxic. Just the sense of men on men, or men helping men, is toxic. And I think that concept in of itself is toxic.
And that's a whole different topic on its own. And that
Yeah.
was that was actually one of the things that made me reach out when I saw your podcast. I mean, I've always said that if you have an idea, that idea that you received was also given to a couple of other people at that same time, or it is their capacity to be able to put it to work, that will make the idea come to life. So when I saw your podcast, you have no idea how thankful I was, because we had this young man, Andrew Tate, a couple of months ago. That, I mean, even though he was who he was, which I absolutely respect, but this guy, all he's done was just telling men what they need to know, what you're supposed to hear. He was saying it in the way nobody else understood except men. And like you said, then the word toxic came in, and it was shut down, it was canceled. But the way you came in, you are sharing a message. You are listening to other people. You are giving people platform to share what they are thinking and what their work is. And I'm absolutely excited for you. And I want to thank you for coming up with such a great concept. I'll tell you one short story real quick. There was a young man in my unit a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago. I was doing my security round. He had Osama bin Laden picture in his house, and he has Tupac Shakur picture in his house, two of them side by side. So I was curious just where I am, and so I stopped in front of his house, in front of his bunk, and I asked, why do you have those two contrasting men in your house? He said, because I draw a lot of inspiration from them. I said, I want to hear more. You know, he said, Tupac, he said, check it out, boss. That's what they call us. He said, he's been dead since 1996. He said, but some of the things he said in his song are still happening today. And the only reason why he got killed early was because he never had a father figure. And when he said that, I remembered I watched a documentary on Tupac himself, actually saying the same thing, that I have a big mouth. I have a big mouth. That maybe if he had someone while he was growing up to tell him to shut up when he should shut up and speak when he should speak, he would probably live longer. He was not even dead then. So I asked about Osama bin Laden. He said because that man had a conviction. He said he had a conviction about his life, which no other person understood, but he had a conviction. He said, He does not care what any of us think about him, but that's what. So that means he had his own. He had a purpose, but he just didn't have anybody to share with. And when I was leaving, he said, "Boss, do you know that I've had this here for many, many years, but nobody has ever stopped to ask me why do I have them?"
Mm.
And he said, "Thank you for the conversation, because again, by policy, we are not supposed to stand and talk to them for too long, because you have to always keep that gap between you as a law enforcement officer and the inmate." So, and he thanked me, and I mean, I could still tell you the story today exactly the way it happened, because I remember that conversation with him, that he just needed at a point in his life or every day of his life, just somebody to give him that validation, to show him that he's not useless, or to tell him that you're doing good, you're doing a good job, or to ask him, what do you want to do with your life? Most of the inmates that I leave in my camp, I ask them, what are you going to do? Especially when they give them parole and they're excited, I'll ask them, what are you going to do that will make you not to come back? Some of them don't actually think about it until I ask them that question. But once I ask them, they will go further to ask me, what can I do? Because some of them don't even know what they're going to do. Right. Some have been locked up 20, 18, 10 years. They have nothing to fall back on. I will say, okay, what do you love to do? The agency, the criminal justice system give you opportunity to earn your GED, to get your degree if you want, to learn any kind of vocation. You have to take advantage of that. You having a friend or a buddy in the prison will offer you nothing. Find something for your life so that when you get out there, you don't go back to crime. You have something to fall back on. So I've been sharing the message, and I've been doing my bit, and I will keep doing that.
That's amazing. I know we've been going for a while now. I think we could talk all day. I have a lot of questions, but I want to get down to last few questions here. Like some of my closers. So the first one is, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and tell him one thing, what would that be? It could be a piece of advice, it could be a quote, it could be a lesson that you've learned along the way, but maybe the young version of you who's about to come to America for the first time, what would you tell that guy?
That's a very interesting question that is worth thinking about. A younger version of myself will probably be a teenager that is about to set sail in life, and that would be for me to seek knowledge, get basic understanding about life, know that life is not going to be easy, that life is going to be hard. This is what they don't tell us, and also that along the line, if you continue to seek knowledge, that you are going to find your feet. If you don't give up on your belief, if you take knowledge as the most important weapon to empower yourself with, then you're going to be fine. And that very early in life, just throw yourself out there. Start asking important questions. Start taking risk, because once you become a dad, or you start having responsibility, there's so much you can do thereafter. So that's probably what I would tell my younger self. Seek knowledge early and have the understanding that life is not going to be easy, but you will be fine.
I love that. And then secondly, in your eyes, what defines being a man?
Having a purpose, having a calling, being a man that stand through tests, because life is going to test you, but the capacity for you to be able to stand that test, reveal your true character, and not just to yourself, because either your kids or your siblings or people that are following you are watching, and they are seeing how you are going through that process and how you're going to get out of it. So having that sense of purpose and following it and working very, very hard at that purpose that you have is what I think defines a man, because we are not going to be remembered by how many vehicles we have, how many houses we built, or how many phones we have, how many landed property we have. We're going to be remembered by how many people that we're able to impact, how many purposeful people we're able to raise, and how much of a life of impact that we're able to live. For me, that's the true definition of a man.
I love that. And then the last one I have is, what is one quote that is always stuck with you or that you try to live by?
It's very short. But when you say one, I have more than one, but this one is very short and very simple. And it was said by Tony Robbins. It said, "Change is automatic, but progress is not. Either you like it or not, you're going to grow old. You're going to your body is going to change. Things are going to happen in your life, but being a person of success, having progress in your life is something you have to work at. You can complain all you want that I want this, I should do this, I should do that, I should work out, I should train extra hard. But if you don't make that should a must, you're just going to remain in the same spot. So change is automatic, but progress is not.
Amazing. Well, that's the last question I had. I'll give you this chance to share anything that you would like to, any closing messages with anyone listening right now, and or ask me anything if you are curious. And then certainly let the people know how they can follow you. I'll put all of your contact information in the show notes so people can follow along with what you're working on. But I'll give you this time.
Thank you very much, Zach. Personally, I love sharing my life experience in as an immigrant that I've had his own struggle and a lot of interesting stories to share with younger people. And I do this through my life coaching side hustle, as I call it. I love to talk to students in middle school, in high school, just to share experience. I would love to have more opportunity to share this message across the United States in different schools. I'm also working on a solution for athletes, especially athletes from the African continent, to have a path where they can be able to share their skill, their talent, and their grade level on the platform for a chance to find a college opportunity in the United States and Canada or any other part of the world that are offering a lot of scholarships to students that are very good at their skill or at their sport. Basically, Scoutballers sport recruiting is going to be a three-phase platform that looks after basketball players or aspiring basketball players, soccer players, and players that are into track and field. It's at scoutballers.com. And also, you can reach out to me on all social media platforms at my name, Bayonle Arashi. It's BAYONLEARASHI. Zach said he's going to share it. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I'm very excited for what the future holds. I'm very excited that I have my purpose. I am a student of leadership, like I said. I'm learning every day of my life, and I'm learning from a lot of people. And I'm going to urge you, if you listen to this, to always seek knowledge. Never stop learning. Never, ever stop learning. And don't also believe that you can only learn from a particular person or particular place. You can learn from anything and from everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And that's just about it for me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Bayonle, for taking your time today. And thank you for sharing a little bit of your story with me and those listening. It means a lot. Thank you for reaching out in the first place. I'm excited to see what you continue to build, and you've got my support fully as you continue to work towards it. To those listening, thank you for listening all the way to the end. I hope you did stay, because I think it was good all the way up until the very end. You can follow along the podcast on Instagram at Vitruvian Gentleman. You can follow myself on Instagram at ZDSTHENKEN. Message me your thoughts. any topics you want me to talk about, future guests, etc. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for spending your time with me today. It is your most valuable resource. Memento Mori, and I will see you on the next episode of the Vitruvian Man podcast.
And if he fails, at least fails while daring greater, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.